investors seem not impressed. What does this mean for the trajectory of Apple with these new products?
Well, you know, the challenge for Apple now is they've already set such an incredibly high bar for themselves. You know, they're really competing against themselves. It's not about competing against Samsung and these other guys. It's against themselves, and that's getting harder and harder to do, quite honestly. You know, the other challenge is you've got products that are really, really good already, so now you're making some incremental improvements in a lot of cases, and at a certain point, those increments aren't necessarily enough to get people to say, oh, yeah, I got to change what I've got. So, you know, in the case of the iPhone, for example, I think we'll see a lot of the people who didn't quite make it to an iPhone 6 go, oh, all right, fine, now, you know, I can make the move. But I'm not convinced we're going to see a whole ton of people who already have a 6 move to the 6S.
Well, and let's talk about China here, because if it doesn't look very different, I mean, why show off to your friends that you have a new one that looks like the old one?
Well, and that's a great point, and it does look almost identical. In fact, frankly, it does look identical because most of the changes are internal. You know, the Force Touch feature that Brad talked about is, or the 3D Touch they called it, it's interesting. You know, it doesn't work on every application. And so some people are going to push it and it won't necessarily do anything, and that can be a little offsetting. Plus, you know, the reality is it's not going to work on any of the existing iPhones. So application developers have to deal with creating special versions just for the new phone. So there's work they've got to do there. But that's why it's like, yeah, it's nice, but I'm not sure it changes the world.
Okay, what about the iWatch and the Apple Pencil and the new upgrade for Apple TV? How about those? Are those game changers?
You know, the Apple Watch stuff was really nothing more than a couple other bands and a couple of colors. You know, if you liked the Apple Watch before, you'll still like it now. If you didn't care for the Apple Watch before, this is not going to change anything. The iPad Pro is an interesting product, but it's really expensive. Frankly, it's kind of, and Apple would never admit it, it's kind of like their version of a Microsoft Surface Pro 3. And by the time you add the keyboard and the pencil, you're up to almost $1,300 with the high-end model. Now, you know, and the pencil's nice, but let's be honest, it's a stylus, which Steve Jobs, of course, swore Apple would never do. And it's $100, and there's no case for it, no place to put it, even inside the keyboard case. So people are going to lose the thing, which is going to be frustrating at $100. And it's nice for a small niche of people. The Apple TV was actually probably the most impressive thing of the day because it had a really nice new interface, and the touch remote they had was pretty clever. The challenge, though, just to finish the thought on that one, is that how many people are really going to cut the cord? Because all of these over-the set-top boxes are for people who, you know, cut off traditional satellite and cable TV services. And certainly here in the U.S., that's a big deal. I know it's different in China.